My cheating girlfriend tells me to move out for her new boyfriend, so I gaslight her and ruin her relationship. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. I did this to an ex who asked me to move out while she was on a work trip and told me she was coming back with her new boyfriend. We were still together when she left. I got these little noisemakers, battery-powered ones, the size of a quarter, that emit sound at just the right volume that you aren't sure if you really heard it. It was so.
My entitled sister is making my life a living nightmare in my own home, causing so much chaos, being incredibly lazy, and refusing to get a job to pay her own way. And after 6 months of dealing with her garbage, I am simply at the end of my rope and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I bought my house back last year. My mom lives with me because of health issues, and when she found out my sister got kicked out of her apartment, my mom asked me to let her come and live with us. For starters, my sister and I were never close. In fact, in high school, she would often make me walk home. My mom and I were told that she would need help finding a new place to live, and she would need to find work to move back out. While this has been the biggest lie I've ever been told, she has been living in my house for about 6 months now, and it has been an absolute nightmare. Every rule I set, she has broken. For starters, she would trash my house, and then yell at me to clean it up, because she claims she's the guest and she should not have to clean. She also doesn't pick up her dog's waste, and her dog would even go on the neighbor's driveway, and then the neighbor would complain to me. And when that happens, my sister would then start screaming at the neighbor. So needless to say, my neighbors are now starting to hate me. My sister also eats all of the food in the house, which then leads to me complaining that there's no food for me and my mom. I have seriously lost 30 pounds since she started living here. When my mom and I cook, she'll complain that it's gross, and then demands that we go buy something else. And when we ask her why she doesn't just cook the dinner herself, she will then go back to screaming that she's a guest and she should not have to cook dinner. Now, she lost her job a month ago and started demanding that I give her money when I told her I can't do that because most of my money goes to bills and whatever's left over for groceries or animal care or stuff like that. She starts screaming because she needs money for makeup and face wash because she claims she can't look like trash like the rest of us. Now, for me personally, I don't have a problem with buying this stuff for her, especially if the makeup and the face wash was like maybe 20 bucks or something like that. But no, she wants the ones that are $30 or $50 because they're the only one that work for her. She is constantly attacking me and my mom all the time, and she laughs like a hyena when she makes my mom have a breakdown. And I also really fear for the safety of my pets. My mom and I are not wanting to kick her out because we don't know what will happen to her, and most of our family want nothing to do with her. If next month comes around and she hasn't changed at all, I may have to kick her out myself. We don't know what else to do. We are starting to not like coming home, and I love my home. But with my sister being there, she's starting to make me want to sell it just so I can get a new one so that I can get out of here. What should I do? What a horrible situation to be stuck in. First off, you have this new house that you bought, and you were probably excited to live in it with your mom. And then your sister comes around after getting kicked out of her apartment and literally makes your life a living nightmare. Like seriously, let's talk about some of the things that she does. First and foremost, the fact that she's saying she's a guest in your house and she shouldn't have to cook or clean or anything like that is honestly ridiculous. Of course she should have to clean and cook. What is she talking about? Your sister has literally lived there for 6 months. It's time to step up and do something in the house, not just laying around and expecting everything to be done for you. That is so unfair for you as well as your mother. Her behavior is absolutely inappropriate, and it's honestly kind of no surprise that she got kicked out of her apartment. I mean, look at the way she's acting. This is probably why she got kicked out. This also makes me question if the original poster knew about their sister's behavior. Like, did they know ahead of time that she would be an absolute nightmare, that she would make everybody's lives really miserable, and she would be this lazy, freeloading person that's currently living in the original poster's house? Like, please tell me you didn't know that ahead of time. I mean, don't get me wrong, I totally understand that this is your sister and you absolutely want to try and take care of family, but if you knew that she was acting like this in previous living situations, as well as the fact that the other members of your family don't want anything to do with her, then this was seriously a bad move of letting her live with you at all, because this is now what you have to deal with. So if I was in your shoes, I would absolutely be giving her an ultimatum. I would be saying, hey, if you want to live here, you got to straighten up your act, start paying rent, and carrying your weight around this house. It's not fair for me as well as our sick mother to have to give you money and take care of you at the drop of a hat. Get a job and pay your way, or you can get out. And yeah, personally, I can totally understand your hesitation. You don't want her to get kicked out because you're not sure what's going to happen to her. But seriously, that's not really up to you. If your sister wants to ruin her life, that really is on her. I mean, you tried to help her and said, hey, live with me and mom, let's figure this out. But she straight up lied to you by saying she's going to get a job as well as find a new place to live. So personally, if I was in your shoes, there's no way I would sell my house, but instead I would tell my sister that if she wants to live here, she either needs to fix her attitude and get a job, or she needs to simply get out. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. An entitled Karen demands that I hand over my Nintendo Switch, claiming that her daughter wants it more and that I shouldn't have it because I'm a grown man. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I sat down on the train, and a little girl sits down next to me with her Karen mom sitting across from her. About 10 minutes after the train starts to move, I was starting to play a game on my Nintendo Switch. The little girl sees it and asks if she can play, and I said yes, but I told her to ask her mom first. The mom says yes, so I just let her play on it. I also ask what stop they're getting off at, as I'm getting off a few stops before the end of the line. Eventually, after about an hour, I'm coming very close to the station, and I said to her, I'm sorry, sweetie, I'm getting off here. And the little girl hands back my Nintendo Switch with a big smile and even a bigger thank you. It's been nice and quiet for an hour, and it was fantastic seeing the happiness on the little girl's face while she was playing on my Nintendo Switch. But that's right about when it all went downhill. The mom sitting across from her turned into an entitled Karen at the drop of a hat. This entitled Karen then says, my daughter is having so much fun with the Switch. Can't she just keep playing? Now, when she said this, I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm getting off at the next stop. But it's right about then that this Karen starts to go nuclear. She shouts out, my daughter is having fun with it. What's a grown man like you doing playing with a children's toy? Just give it to her right now. I said to her, I have given it to her for the past hour to play with. And by the way, this is all while you've been playing on your phone. The Karen then screams at me and says, if you gave it to her, then it's hers. It's not yours anymore. And when I heard her say that, I was seriously baffled. I then interjected and told her, ma'am, she was borrowing it from me. Have you ever heard of the concept before? Thankfully, I saw my stop coming up. And without further ado, I picked up my bag with the Switch packed nicely away and then turned to the little girl and said, you seem like a nice, well-behaved little girl. Please don't turn out like your mother. I then walked off the train after getting the last word in. I breathed in the sweet air of freedom. Completely wrong. Yeah, that lady was seriously crazy. Like, first off, you need to take care of your kid on the train, and you should not rely on strangers to keep them entertained. Like, it is seriously not the original poster's fault that the kid was bored and looking at his Nintendo Switch. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with having a Nintendo Switch and being an adult. It is literally one of the best consoles out there right now, and it's something you can enjoy on the go like the original poster. So that statement from the entitled Karen was just off the bat really uncalled for. But also, how insane do you have to be to seriously think that just because someone borrowed your Switch, they now somehow own it? Like, seriously, if this entitled Karen really wanted her daughter to have a Nintendo Switch, then she would pony up the money just like anybody else. So good for the original poster for not bending to this weird entitled Karen, because based on what we know, she absolutely does not sound like a good parent.
Want to make a podcast? Spotify has got a platform that lets you make one super easily and then distribute it everywhere and even earn money. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. It lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. You guys probably noticed that Am I the Jerk has video podcasts, and that's one of the things that I like the most. I definitely recommend you give it a try. It's free and has no catch. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Today, I messed up by going on a date with my friend, resulting in her using me for a free meal. Here's what happened. So I went on a date with one of my friends whom I will call Sarah. Sarah is not her real name. I also attend the same university as Sarah. I've always known that my friend has a thing for me, but I've always been reluctant to go on a date with her because I genuinely value our friendship and felt putting romance there would just mess things up. Well, about a week ago, I was hanging out with Sarah and our other mutual friend as they listened to me complain about my unfortunate dating history. The mutual friend then put out the idea of a date between Sarah and I. He did this mainly just to make the room temporarily awkward, but it led to a conversation where I essentially asked Sarah for a date. For the days leading up to the date, both Sarah and I became a lot more flirty, and I have to admit I was kind of excited for the date itself. 2 days ago, I picked up Sarah, and we went to a fairly fancy restaurant. When the waiter came, I ordered my food. She then ordered basically 3 separate meals, and I didn't know what to say or how to question why she ordered so much food. When I finished my food, she barely ate half of one plate, and then she said that she wasn't actually hungry because she ate lunch right before she left her place. I then asked her why she ordered 3 meals, and she said one is for her mom's dinner since she always wanted to try this restaurant out, and the other meal is for her to eat with her mom during dinner. I then told her that I think it's nice that she got dinner for her mom. It's cute that she would do that, to which she responded by saying, "I should be thanking you since you're paying for it." I had told her that I would pay for the date, but I definitely never agreed to pay for her mom or her to get dinner when we had only gone out for lunch. The meal was expensive, but I would have been fine paying for her if she actually ate all 3 meals. Instead, it just all kind of felt really wrong. The rest of the date was absolutely ruined for me, and I was pretty much checked out of this date, and I was just going through the motions. After I left her at her place, I went radio silent on her, as I was still annoyed by what she did. Today, I wanted to just tell her that I think we should just go back to being friends, but as I opened our chat message with her, I read a message that she sent me shortly after our date. She was basically thanking me for the date, and then went on to pour out her feelings for me, and say that she has loved me for years, and the date was like a dream come true for her. I had to drive over to her place to try and be as gentle as possible that the feelings are definitely not mutual, which did result in her crying and screaming at me as to why I was flirting with her before the date, and why I even asked her out on the date. And needless to say, I honestly felt horrible after that interaction. I personally would not feel horrible about saying, you know what, I don't want to date this lady. She literally used you for 3 different meals, and that is totally unfair for you and your wallet. Like, what was she thinking? Did she really think that this was okay? She could just order 3 different meals and say, it's okay, he's gonna pay for it. And did she really think that wouldn't leave a bad taste in your mouth? Like, if that happened to me, I would not feel bad about turning her down. And if she asked me why I would have asked her out on the date, I would have said to her, I don't know, maybe I thought you were only gonna buy something for yourself and not for your mom and yourself later on. I mean, that really is super inconsiderate in my opinion, and that really would be a deal breaker. Like, that's a horrible first impression. So you didn't mess up. If anything, you probably dodged a really weird person who was just gonna use you for money and for food. And personally, I don't think you deserve that in the slightest. Am I the jerk for wanting my wife to stay up with me during a road trip just so she can talk to me and try and keep me company? Here's what happened. I want to start off by saying I'm writing this right now at the hotel where I'm at because I'm genuinely at a loss for words. I don't think I'm in the wrong, but at the same time, she looks really upset at me. For starters, my wife, myself, and our 2-year-old are going on our first road trip up to California. We rotate driving in shifts, but the problem is that when I was driving, my shift fell during the night, and so I was feeling really lonely and bored as I was driving. I'm not someone who can be left to his own thoughts very well, and I need people around me. I thrive on energy and excitement. My wife is a bit of the opposite. She is generally fine with being left alone and can sit quietly for hours and hours upon end. The problem is that around 11 o'clock p.m., I was driving and my wife and our son was in the back seat. I was feeling isolated, so I shook her awake, but then our son woke up. And well, you can probably guess what happens next. Once he quieted down, my wife began quietly blowing up at me about how much of a jerk I am. I told her that it wasn't fair for her to just sleep like that, and it made me feel like a driver. She then said that she doesn't force me to stay awake or engage with her, but I told her that that's a cheap blow because we're not the same people, and I kept my mouth shut while she was driving because I know she doesn't like distractions, even though it bothered me terribly. So the least she could do is to stop being selfish and help keep me sane. Despite my perfectly logical answer, she apparently got emotional and then started whisper screaming some garbage about
marry me with my money. Marry me with my money.
how raising one toddler is hard enough, off, and that she didn't know there was another one in the car who needed his whims catered to every moment. And at that point, since she got rude, I decided to disengage. Now our whole trip is falling apart, and she's making me out to be the bad guy. So am I the jerk for wanting my wife to stay up with me during a road trip just so she could try and talk to me and keep me occupied? First off, I want to say that yeah, you are absolutely the jerk. Your wife has probably been driving all day and she just wanted to sleep. You've been relaxing, saying nothing, basically had every opportunity to rest and get ready for your shift. And instead of driving that shift and keeping quiet to let your wife and your son sleep, you decided that everybody's got to be awake. And that's so unfair for your wife. She is not an object. She is a living, breathing person who has needs, and right now she and your son need some sleep. But your selfish attitude really just completely spoiled the mood. She is 100% in the right, and you are absolutely wrong. And also, anytime someone's like, I'm perfectly logical and she's just too emotional, that's like a clear-cut sign that you're just toxic and that the other person is probably absolutely right. And in this case, that is exactly what's going on. And it's ironic that you would call her emotional and you're just some logical person when logic would say, hey, my wife has been up all day driving. Maybe I should let her sleep and be able to get some rest. But no, you clearly had to have somebody with you all night just so you can be awake. Like, that is utter BS, and that just does not stand in the slightest. I mean, you clearly got pretty emotional when she called you a giant toddler, which, by the way, that's exactly how you're acting. So if anybody ruined your vacation, congratulations, it's you. The way you acted was completely out of line, and your wife absolutely had every right to sleep. I mean, just imagine how she's gonna be during her shift if she literally didn't get any sleep that night and was then asked to drive the car. That's not gonna happen. That's incredibly unsafe, and it's selfish and very self-centered of you to think that this is appropriate in any situation. Am I the jerk for not wanting to share my father's $500,000 estate with the rest of my siblings? So my father gave me his entire estate. Everything was willed to me only, leaving out my 5 siblings. They aren't happy about this, and they are demanding that I split it equally, while also claiming that this is what dad would have wanted. I have been made out to be a greedy villain to our extended family, as they post on Facebook about it constantly. I am the youngest of 6 children, and I have been financially caring for my father for over 7 years now. I also care for an older disabled sibling. My father was very fortunate to own a house, as well as multiple vehicles, and had a decent life insurance payout. I was on the deed to the house prior to his passing. The total inheritance for me was around $500,000 in the house, $60,000 across a couple of vehicles, and $200,000 for his insurance policy, with about $20,000 of that being used for funeral expenses. It was mere hours after he passed away when my siblings began asking about who would get a certain vehicle. My oldest sister also talked about fixing up a few things in the house and putting it on the market to sell it a little bit later. They had no idea I was on the deed for years. Now, the 4 siblings who are upset do not live near us. 2 didn't come to the funeral, and they only visit about once every year for a couple of days. I was aware the entire time that I would be getting everything. It had been this way in our family since I was in my 20s. I still have paperwork from previous life insurance plans that lists me as the payout. My father believed me to be the most responsible, that I would also care for my disabled brother after he was gone. They were quite upset to see I've known this for years and didn't mention anything. I've turned to my disabled brother for support, but he can't really comprehend what's going on, nor does he really care. They have all reached out to lawyers, but mine says everything is pretty solid, since I have immense amount of documentation to show that this was his decision for almost a decade. However, I feel like I'll ruin my family if I keep it to myself. I own a small business and I make a decent living for myself, so I've paid my dad's expenses for years and allowed him to pay his debts instead. I don't see why I should have to share with family members who were never around, nor did anything for him. I've sacrificed relationships, I've sacrificed having children, all of this just so I could take care of my dad. He's been my number one my whole life. So am I the jerk for not sharing in my father's estate with the rest of my siblings who clearly were never there for him? So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk at all. Your siblings showed their true colors by not only not showing up to his funeral, but also not being involved at all when he was clearly in need of help. Like you put it best, you gave up everything so you could take care of your dad. And that is seriously a very noble thing to do. And as long as you have that paper trail and you've got that evidence to say, hey, he did this like a decade ago. This isn't something he did right before he passed away, and it certainly wasn't anything that you influenced. If you have all of that evidence, I honestly don't think you're going to be in any kind of trouble. At least that's me. I think you should talk to your lawyer no matter matter what. But all in all, I wouldn't blame you if you kept this to yourself. You have sacrificed a lot of time and effort just to take care of your dad. And you can bet he's probably eternally grateful for your sacrifice. And I really would just ignore your extended family on Facebook. They're idiots. Because where were they when he was having financial troubles for nearly 7 years? You were the only one to step up and say, okay, I'm going to help you. I'm going to use my small business to try and keep everybody afloat. And you did just that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all, in my opinion. And it's something that you absolutely should feel proud of. Not to mention that you were also helping take care of your disabled sibling, something that the rest of your siblings didn't even want to try to do. So if you do decide to keep the estate all for yourself, I personally would not blame you or think that you're the jerk. You did everything you could to take care of your family, and you made sacrifices for your family, as well as any future family that you might have, just so your dad and your disabled sibling could have some kind of life. I mean, look at the way they acted right after he passed away. Literally hours after he was gone, they were already trying to arrange who got what vehicle and what they were going to do to the house just to try and make a pretty penny. And I also really don't think this is the case of like your dad picking favorites or anything like that. You were the one who stepped up to the plate and helped him out. You were there and cared for him for over a decade. Also, everybody else in the family is fully grown and can support themselves. I mean, it doesn't seem like they have no money and that they're completely helpless. So hopefully this all works out for you, because your dad clearly wanted you to have his estate, and it really does not sound like your dad wanted to split it up between your siblings at all. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, use the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out in the description below and subscribe.
I got back at my homophobic father by pretending to have a boyfriend and bringing him over for Christmas dinner. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. Ever since I can remember, I've been completely and utterly under the thumb of my father. All of us have been. Us being me, my younger brother, little sister, and my mother. My father is a raging jerk. A male chauvinist, over-the-top macho type of guy. And growing up, I've always been the victim of his dislike, because I didn't really fit in with his image of the ideal son. I was, for lack of a better word, a bit of a girly boy growing up. I wanted nothing more than to dance and frolic around in dresses. When I was 4 or 5, my mother had this big box of dress-up clothes. She brought it down from the attic and I immediately picked out the prettiest, frilliest, golden-colored dress I could find. I pranced around in it and declared myself a princess, and that I was now a girl. This went on for a few months, but strictly during the day when my father was away at work. I watched ballet videos with my mother, a soft-spoken and open-minded woman who worked part-time as a social worker in those days. I was happy, careless. My father was and is an authoritarian figure. He had himself legally emancipated at an early age just so he could join the army ahead of time. After 3 years in the army, he left as a lower-level officer and started a career as a seaman. He was a captain when he and my mother met and had me. Later, he left his naval career and became a traveling salesman. Think Don Draper if Don Draper was a 6'4" Western European man with curly graying hair and piercing blue eyes. I've always found him incredibly intimidating, and I think my mother did too. Anyway, long story short, he came home early one day. He saw me in my dress and told me in an icy voice, "Go take that off. After you take it off, go sit on the sofa." So I took it off, little hands trembling, and next he summoned my mother into the room, demanded to know what the hell she had been doing to this boy. I had never seen a person shrink so much so quickly. I myself was like a tiny little fly on the wall at this point, barely present. He took the box with clothes up to the attic, put a lock on it, and informed us that we were not to touch it until my wife gives me a daughter. It stayed there in the attic untouched until my sister was born 10 years later. My father took more of an interest in my upbringing at this point. He took me to see Navy ships, races, and made me go to martial arts. He seemed determined to make a man out of me, and in some ways he succeeded. One thing he allowed me to do was keep my long hair, knowing I was bullied at school for it and wanted at times to cut it off for that reason. He insisted I keep my long hair, face the bullies, and beat the crap out of them every time they called me a girl to show them how much of a girl I was. I did just that. It toughened me up in some way, but it also damaged me in other ways. By the time I went to college, I had grown into a pretty normal dude. I wasn't gay, I wasn't even a crossdresser, although deep down inside I still had those urges. I tried desperately to fit in and be what he wanted me to be, But I also grew more and more resentful. In college, I made a lot of different friends, including some guys I met in an acting class we both took. One of them was pretty much your typical flaming and fabulous type of guy. He was as over-the-top gay as my father was over-the-top straight. I told him one night when we were drinking about my upbringing and my terrible father. And my friend, let's call him Paul, suggested I should get back at him. I asked him how. Basically, why not pretend like I was gay? But not just say it over the phone or something, or even to my father's face in person. No, much better. I'd hint for weeks in advance about having met somebody and being in a relationship. I'd say it was a girl. I would ask if I could bring Paula over for dinner at Christmas when the whole family would be there, and I'd arrive at the house with Paul instead. So I did exactly that. I went to the house at Christmas, dressed to the nines. I told my father and mother that Paula was caught up, but she's about to come. I'll just open the door. So I sat down with my family. Cousins, uncles, aunts, my grandparents, all just as conservative as my father. I waited for a while, heard the door and rushed to open it. Walked into the living room where everyone was gathered and introduced Paul, my boyfriend. I've never seen a room go so quiet. People literally gasped for air. My sister, brother, and mother looked both scared and amused, but everyone else was in shock. My father seething. He just completely lost it. Right in front of everyone. Veins bulging in his neck to the point where they looked like they were about to pop. He told me to leave. Ordered me, essentially. My grandparents urged him not to make a scene, but he made one. I replied calmly how he should do it. Call the police and explain the situation to them. I knew he never would. He knew some of the officers well. It wasn't a call he would be willing to make, and it wasn't a situation he was willing to explain. I called his bluff, and he just sank. Like he shrank before my eyes. My mother and grandmother had to calm him down. He walked out of the room defeated. I just stood there not believing my own eyes. I finally felt free. Like I didn't care anymore. He had scared me for so many years. Terrified me, and now I could see him for the caricature he really was. It felt amazing. Paul and I stayed the whole evening. He played his part perfectly. He eventually managed to charm some of my aunts and even my grandmother, who told me unironically how glad she was that I found such a delightful man, and that he reminded me of her favorite TV character, Mr. Humphreys from Are You Being Served? My father later came back to the room, sat in the corner, and refused to meet my gaze. He drank too much whiskey. My mother kept talking to him in a hushed tone of voice, and he kept making a go-away gesture with his hand. I stayed away from home for a while. I've already explained to everyone how it had been a prank, how I had to make a point and get back at my father for how he had treated me. Pretty much everyone sympathized. I didn't lose anyone in my family over what happened, but my father lost a lot of respect in people's eyes, I feel. He was always in control of things. He always directed the scene, but now he doesn't anymore. I do my own thing. My sister does her own thing. He cannot order people around anymore, and I feel like a fool for ever letting him. I can now wear whatever the hell I want to wear, enjoy whatever hobbies I want to enjoy, and nothing changes. He threatened to disinherit me that night. He threatened a lot of things, but in the end, something inside him just broke. All of my relationships since have been with women, and I have since married and had my own children. My younger brother came out as gay eventually, but by that time my now aging father had mellowed down somewhat, and as he already had grandchildren and his legacy is thus secured, he didn't seem to mind too much. It helps that my brother is a muscular gym rat and that they can bond over sports, more than my father and I ever did. But whenever the subject of sexuality comes up, my father is still incredibly awkward. I don't think it will ever change. But I feel my revenge has been pretty successful in the end. He was being a jerk and somebody had to show him. I think our original poster handled this pretty well, honestly. He went to an extreme to show just how extreme his father was being in return. And it seems like the message may have gotten across. He wasn't happy about it at first, and it probably took a little while for the message to really set in. But the fact that his brother later came out as gay and dad was okay with it does show that there was some growth there. And I'm sure this interaction had a lot to do with that. As our poster said, he got a lot of backlash from the rest of the family as well. So maybe with it coming from so many different directions that what he's doing is wrong, someone was able to get through and it finally clicked for him. I'm really happy with how the story ended. Everyone seems to be in a better place as a result. I locked myself and my newborn in the guest bedroom so that I could finally spend some time with her away from my wife. My daughter is 2 weeks old. I've barely held her since she was born. My wife constantly has her. When I do get to hold her, my wife just starts crying hysterically until I give her back. I asked her why, and she said she was anxious that something would happen to our daughter, and that's why she felt the need to hold her so close. No matter how much I tried to reassure her, she just wouldn't let up. I practically begged her to just let me hold her so that my wife could shower, eat, and care for herself, but nothing worked. I felt like I was losing precious bonding time with my daughter, so I did what I thought I had to do. My wife fell asleep on the sofa with our child. So I took her, went to the guest bedroom, and locked the door. My wife woke up shortly after, very upset that our daughter wasn't with her. She soon realized I was in the guest room and begged me to open the door. She was crying, kicking, and screaming. I didn't open it though, and spent a good couple of hours with our daughter in there. Apparently, my wife had called her mom because I got a call from my mother-in-law cussing me out, saying how I shouldn't be taking a newborn from her postpartum mother and other things like that. My wife has been furious with me and won't speak. And I'm just so frustrated because I really just wanted to spend quality time with my child. But maybe that wasn't the way to do it. Am I the jerk? Okay, so this is another one where I feel like I can see it from both sides. I absolutely understand how our original poster feels, that this is an important time with the baby, and the way that the mother feels, he feels as well. He wants to be able to spend some time with his child as well. Now, that being said, yes, mother is going through a lot right now. I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to pretend to be one, but we all know about postpartum depression. I think it's pretty clear from her actions here that she doesn't seem to be behaving rationally. And to be honest, right now, it's kind of hard to expect her to be able to. I really think that she needs to talk to someone. This is something that she does need to get over. Her husband needs to be able to spend time with the child as well. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, but in terms of everything being fair and equal, the mother's behavior is over the top here.
This episode is brought to you by Carvana. Since 2012, Carvana has sold over 1 million vehicles and received more than 145,000 five-star reviews, all in the name of driving customers happy. With thousands of affordable vehicles and the ability to deliver yours right to your door, they're here to put a smile on your face. Carvana, they'll drive you happy. Availability may vary by market. Tap the banner, click on this episode's page, or visit Carvana.com to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. What if your life story was a podcast? Would it be a comedy?
Love great shopping deals? Then you'll love Wish. And now Wish is even better with flat rate shipping, improved tracking, and faster delivery. With flat rate shipping, all the eligible items in your Wish order now ship for one flat rate of $2.99. Drones, drills, dresses, makeup, mixers, mobile phones. When you place one order, you pay just one flat rate, tracking included. Wish shipping isn't just cheaper either. It's also 26% faster. So what's your holdup? With Wish, you've got crazy low prices, super affordable shipping, and faster delivery. Download the Wish app today.
This episode is brought to you by Pennzoil. At Pennzoil, we have one job, pioneering a motor oil so advanced you don't have to think about your motor oil. Instead, you can think about how your engine sounds, how your stomach feels as the RPMs build, how your wheels hug the curves, and how with Pennzoil Platinum up to 15-year, 500,000-mile protection guarantee, your adventures will be many. Pennzoil, long may we drive. Enrollment required. Keep your receipts. Other conditions apply. See pennzoil.com/warranty for full details. Ask for it at Jiffy Lube.
Be it by land, air, sea, or an ever-changing digital landscape, our nation is threatened by the unexpected and unrelenting. But as our enemies shift and evolve with every passing moment, Marines will adapt to defeat any threat. Because in the battles for America's future, there is only one constant. Marines who will win them. The few, the proud, the Marines.
My sister's ex ruined her only birth experience, so I made sure he'd never forget her. When I was 14 and my oldest sister Sarah was 22, we found out that she was pregnant with Paul, her boyfriend of 4 years. They immediately got engaged and they were really happy, for a time. Sarah had a horrible pregnancy. About 16 to 18 weeks in, the wonder of creating a human life evaporated within her. She developed hyperemesis, which, if you don't know, is really bad morning sickness. She was in constant pain, She developed gestational diabetes and just all around hated the experience. Around this time, Paul, the then fiance, started getting sick of the complaining. I believe the argument was, "Your body was built to do this, it can't be that bad." Sarah was due around Valentine's Day, and Paul's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Doe, were both very excited, both about the grandkid and the fact that he could be born on a holiday. She was very against that and really hoped that her son wouldn't be born on a holiday, even one as small as Valentine's Day. Her birthday sometimes falls on Easter and she hates it. She was worried it might make him feel that his day isn't very much about him. Well, Mrs. Doe says something like, "Well, if you name him Valentine or Valentino, then that'll make the day even more special to him." Again, sister hated the idea. She thought it was so tacky. He'd be bullied for it and just really didn't like the name Valentino. Paul loved it, but agreed to go with a more average name like Daniel or Jared. Fast forward to February and she was ready to get this over with. Sarah had officially been put on bed rest because while standing or walking, her blood pressure took unexpected spikes and dips. I look back now and I really do feel bad for her. She was doing her best to avoid giving birth on Valentine's Day because, again, she didn't want him to be born on a holiday. Unfortunately, births happen when they happen, and that baby was gonna come on Valentine's whether she wanted him to or not. I remember waiting out in the waiting room with my dad, brothers, and Paul, who couldn't stand to be in the delivery room because it was gross. I was so mad that he could have gone in but wouldn't because he thought my sister was gross while giving birth. Whereas I had to stay outside because I was too young to go in with my mom and other sister. Dad went home with the youngest two brothers while the oldest, Zeke, stayed to watch me because I refused to leave. 16 hours after Sarah went into labor, my little nephew was officially part of the family on the evening of Valentine's Day. Unfortunately, Sarah was not okay. She had to have an emergency cesarean section and while doing the operation discovered that the back of her uterus facing her spinal cord had a very large and very severe, thankfully non-cancerous tumor. When I say large, I mean it was twice the size of a standard uterus. The doctors were shocked and didn't understand why nobody had noticed it on an ultrasound. It accounted for her severe back pain and blood pressure issues. The doctors immediately went in for more surgery to remove the tumor, but sadly ended up having to perform a full hysterectomy. This meant that my nephew would be Sarah's only child. Now, while Sarah was in for surgery, Paul was taking care of everything baby related to make sure his son was okay. In my 14-year-old self's memory, I remember him being suitably distraught, but I didn't really pay him much mind and spend my time in the waiting room with my mother and other sister. Zeke, however, wanted to be a good future brother-in-law and made sure that Paul was okay. He found Paul filling out the baby paperwork on his own, looking, in my brother's words, like he had not a single worry in his mind. Zeke asked why Paul didn't wait for Sarah to fill out the paperwork as she should be out of surgery within the hour, and Paul said he just wanted her to get her rest and heal. That checked out with Zeke as he was 16 and didn't know any better at the time. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. No, he wouldn't. He knows how much she hates that name, and still, she'd need to sign the paperwork too. My fellow peoples of Reddit, I regret to inform you that Paul forged Sarah's signature on the paperwork and waited until she was out of surgery to hand said paperwork over. My sweet nephew that was born on Valentine's Day was named Valentino on his official birth certificate. I still to this day don't know why Paul and his family were so insistent about the name. He had even picked out a different one with my sister. And before you ask, no, he was never brought up on forgery charges because his parents were witnesses to her signing the papers, even though they only got there at the last minute. So Sarah dumped him and got her son's name changed a month later. She was willing to do split custody with him because that's her son's father, and she wants the kid to know him. But Paul vanished and she never heard anything back, which seemed weirdly out of character to us, until a mutual friend on Facebook was tagged in his wedding pictures 6 months later. Paul had apparently started cheating on her not long after she got pregnant. Sarah was livid, but there wasn't much she could do, so she filed for child support and continued to live her best life. Until 6 years later. And this is where the revenge begins, my friends. So Sarah has been a single mother for the past 6 years and has been amazing at it. At this point in my career, I've been a hairdresser for about 6 months at our local Great Clips. I'm working one day and who is seated before me but Paul's wife, Jane herself. I take her back for a trim and she clearly has no idea who I am. That adds up because a mutual friend that still keeps in contact with Paul said that Jane doesn't know a thing. She has no idea about Sarah, that she was the other woman, or that Paul actually has a kid that he's been infrequently paying child support for. She's in the dark on it all. I told myself not to be a jerk and treat her like a normal customer, which I did. Now, at this point, Jane was heavily pregnant, so a lot of our conversation was about that. She loved being pregnant, but it was hard. Her husband was so unsympathetic, big shocker, and she was due in 10 weeks, and they still hadn't picked out a name for their baby girl. Ladies and gentlemen, this was my chance. I asked what kind of name she was looking for, and she said, I want something unique and unusual, but not ridiculous like Bryant Leia. You know the kind of names I'm talking about. And Paul had suggested so many already, and she didn't like any of them. So I, the conniving little weasel that I am, said, what about Sarah? My sister's name isn't actually Sarah. She was named after an older family member that passed not long before she was born, but there was no female equivalent for this name, so our parents created one. It's a beautiful name and just what Jane was looking for. She loved it. She stuck by it. And I found out by stalking her Facebook months later that she had put her foot down about it, and that was their daughter's name. Now Paul has a daughter with his ex's name to remind him every day about her, and to also remind him to pay his child support. Little nephew is 10 years old now with a new name and no contact with his biological father, though we do still sometimes call him Val as a family nickname. He likes it, but doesn't want to bring it to school, so it's staying a family nickname. Sarah pretends to hate that we call him that, but in a joking way. As long as he likes it, she doesn't have a problem with it. And she's seeing a new guy who's really great and like a father to Val. But thank God she got rid of the other jerk. This story is almost too perfect. I really hope this is real. All the pieces came together so nicely in the end. And yeah, screw this guy. He deserves it. The only issue I have is what happens when Jane finds out about all of this. I mean, surely he can't keep it a secret forever that he has another kid that he's paying child support for. And I don't think she would appreciate being a part of this little joke, as funny as it may be. But honestly, I'm glad Sarah ditched this guy and she was doing well on her own. Sounds like he only would have just caused stupidity and problems along the way. My mom made me apologize to my siblings for trying to take my own life. This happened when I was 12. I didn't grow up in the best household. Forced homeschooling, no sports or outside activities. So really, I was stuck home all the time. My mom taught me things while homeschooling, which was just me in the background watching her teach my siblings. I'm the youngest of 4. But anyway, that's really besides the point. The main one is that I was incredibly depressed. I tried to take my own life in the bathtub and got close to passing out before my body of course forced me up for air. As a child, I freaked out because I knew what I was trying to do, but not exactly why. So I quickly got dressed and went straight to my mom. She then proceeded to ask how I tried, made me show her the bathroom, and then just shook her head and sighed. Called all my siblings to the dining room, had them sit down, looked at me and said, "Do you want to tell your siblings what you just tried to do and apologize?" All I remember thinking was, is she serious? But bit my tongue and told them anyway. I tried to take my own life. I'm sorry. There wasn't really a reaction. My 2 eldest siblings kinda just shrugged. But then my one sister that's just a year older later told me that she was happy I didn't do it. So yeah, it was never talked about again. I'm not even sure if my dad was told. There was many other attempts later in life, but I'm 21 now, still depressed and have self-body image issues. I live with my boyfriend of 6 years and barely talk to any of them now. I really don't think I was being the jerk here. Yeah, no kidding. This has got to be one of the worst mothers I've ever heard of. What kind of reaction is that? Like, there barely was a reaction. Most parents would be completely distraught over something like this. I don't understand how she could just shrug it off so easily. There's really not a lot to build on this one. She's a horrible mother, and I think anyone is going to agree with that. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot, linked in the description as well. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
My entitled brother steals all of my beer out of my fridge after I let him come over to my place to watch a TV show. But once I found out, I decided to go nuclear by getting my parents involved and ruining any chances he had at denying that he did it. Here's what happened. So this happened some years ago. I don't let my brother stay over at my apartment because he's a blatant thief with any beer in my fridge. If I did something like get a lock for my fridge or something like that, then he would hide bolt cutters in his car. That is just the kind of person that he is. Anyways, years ago, he wanted to stay over at my apartment to watch something on TV. At the house he rented a room in, along with numerous other guys, they often fought over the TV. So I said fine, I would just be in my bedroom playing BioShock Infinite. Well, he showed up with a 6-pack of really cheap beer. I told him not to touch the good stuff in my fridge and to be out by the morning. Then I booted up my PS3 and wailed on some enemies with my Skyhook. I had a few beers in the bedroom with me in a mini cooler, so I wouldn't have to interact with my brother unless I had to. I played for a couple of hours and then I passed out in my bed. When I woke up in the morning, I went to make some coffee. I was out of creamer, so I was just gonna use some milk. But when I opened the fridge, all of my beer and a bottle of whiskey was gone. This was good beer and whiskey too. The beer was a honey beer I still buy on the regular, and the whiskey was Jim Beam honey. I was instantly furious because I knew my no good, rotten, alcoholic thief of a brother stole them. So I called him up. It took 3 tries before he finally picked up his phone, and then he had the audacity to deny he even took the booze. But I pointed out that I had this stuff in the fridge, and it was gone in the morning, and he left before I got up. It literally only could have been him. Well, that finally made him own up to taking it, and then he complained he couldn't resist good booze. I told him I don't care what he can or cannot resist. I wanted it all back, but he brushed me off and said to just go to the store and get some more. I felt like I nearly burst a blood vessel in my brain because I was so angry, but he just hung up the phone on me. The next part I'm so proud of, but it's pretty much my brother's biggest weakness. I called our parents. They were pretty mad on my behalf too, because dad especially appreciates the kind of booze I do, and immediately called my brother. I don't know what dad said to him, but my brother called a little while later and basically said to me, "Really? You got mom and dad involved?" I told him to bring the booze back, and if he opened any of it, he has to replace it. He said to me, "Screw you," and then hung up the phone. He showed up at my door later with the whiskey and beer. He hadn't opened the whiskey yet, but he had started in on the beer, so he had to buy another pack on the way there. Only it wasn't the same beer. It was the cheap garbage he always bought. I told him that wasn't gonna cut it, and he knew it. He said to just take it because he wasn't going back to the store. I then picked up my cell phone and I said, well, perhaps maybe I should call your ex-girlfriend next. She's almost as good at cowing him as our parents. He said I wouldn't dare, but I was ready to push the buttons. So he said, fine, and trudged back to his car. He came back about 20 minutes later, shoved a case of honey beer in my hands, then flipped me off with both hands as he walked away. Yeah, he's that immature. I told him he wasn't welcome to stay over ever again. And he said something like, yeah, whatever, big deal, all before taking off. True to my word, I haven't let him stay over since. He's been here for a party a few times, but I always watched him like a hawk because he still tried to take my good beer. He even got really upset when I made him put a can back in the fridge and only drink the cheap stuff. And there were times he wanted to see something on TV at my place, but I refused after what he did before, and he acted like a complete jerk for it. I said I didn't care. He messed around and he absolutely found out what the consequences were. How rude of your brother. Like seriously, if you're gonna come over to somebody's house, the least you can do is be respectful of their property. Like I'm sure if he went up to you and he said, hey, could I have some of your beer in the fridge? You might have been more inclined to let him have like one beer or something like that. But the fact that he just straight up stole it and said nothing, that in my opinion is completely inexcusable. So good for you for doing whatever it takes to get your stuff back, because your brother absolutely should not have stolen from you, and he absolutely got exactly what he deserved. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Am I the jerk for confronting my friend for taking our picture out of his wallet just to replace it with his girlfriend's? Here's what happened. So my best friend John and I have been friends friends since we were kids. As kids, we were very close, and we had a fake wedding when we were 7 and 8. In high school, we recreated the fake wedding pictures, and he had one of those pictures in his wallet. Since he got his girlfriend by the name of Sarah, that's not her real name, and this was around 2 years ago, John has distanced himself from me. We still hang out, but I feel like he always makes time for her instead of me. The only way I can see him now is if we grab a coffee once every few days, but other than that, he won't come to my house when he used to have sleepovers and movie nights, and he won't invite me to his house either. I feel neglected and hurt because we've been inseparable since we were small kids. A couple of days ago, I grabbed a coffee with him at a coffee shop, and when he opened his wallet to grab his card, I noticed that he put a picture of him and his girlfriend in the place he had our fake wedding pictures at. I asked him about it and pointed out how I noticed, to which the only thing he said was, well, what about it? I was like, really? Why did you take our picture out and replace it with him and his girlfriend? He said that his girlfriend is, well, his girlfriend, and he doesn't understand why I'm making such a big deal out of it. I reminded him that she might be his girlfriend, but he can't just throw me away. I've been his best friend since primary school. My picture existed in his wallet first, and he throws it away to replace it with someone he knows significantly less. He eventually got annoyed and told me that once I stop being an immature, annoying brat, he'll talk to me again. Until then, I better leave him to his peace because he's not dealing with my childish tantrums. So honestly, am I the jerk for confronting my friend about this? Am I in the wrong? What should I do? It's really crazy to think that the original poster is serious in this situation. You're really upset that your friend got rid of your fake wedding photo pictures and put a picture of his girlfriend there instead? Like seriously, you two are not dating. Unless you secretly have life. Your friend is 100% in the right. You're absolutely being an idiot, and he has no obligation to try and keep that picture around if he doesn't want to. Also, that's incredibly uncomfortable. Like seriously, you're attached to this guy as if you actually are married to him. But guess what? You're not married to him. Those were pictures that you took in high school as well as when you were children. And now in your early 20s, it's time to let that stuff go and just like, I don't know, move on with your life. Maybe move on and find an actual relationship instead of trying to cling to this pretend marriage that you clearly are really attached to. Like if you take a step back, this is incredibly weird. Like really, really weird. Like why would this guy seriously think that a pretend photo of the both of them getting married should somehow take precedent over his actual girlfriend? And it's also weird that this guy doesn't realize that his girlfriend absolutely is going to come first in this relationship, meaning that her picture is definitely going to be there in his wallet instead of your staged married photo. So truly, the original poster is absolutely at fault here, and his friend has every right to be annoyed because his friend is acting like a jealous ex, even though they never had anything like that in the first place. Am I the jerk for calling my sister out when she judged me for living at home and wanting children later in life? Here's what happened. So I'm a 25-year-old female and I live at home with my parents. I did live alone before, but due to my mental health at the time, I moved back home. My health is now getting better, and I'm saving up with my partner to move out. I also pay rent to my parents, and I'm also paying my way as well. My older sister judges me for living at home and states that she moved out at 18 years old and it's not that hard. However, my sister seems to forget that she moved in with her then boyfriend's family, and after they broke up, she moved in with her now husband and basically has never lived on her own or really even paid a dime in rent. Yet she's the one judging me. Anyways, I travel with my best friend to go visit my sister as we both live a plane ride away from each other. As I arrived at my sister's place, she decided to say in front of my friend, who also lives at home, that it's super weird that I still live at home, and when she was 25, she was already married with a child. I told her that I'm going to wait until my 30s to have my children, and I'm saving up to move out. She then laughed at me and said that having children in my 30s is so old. But then I said to her, well, not all of us are lucky enough to marry rich. She didn't like that comment and called me a jerk. So honestly, this begs the question, am I the jerk for calling my sister out after she's been judging me for living at home? Your sister sounds like a massive jerk. You are not the jerk in this situation, in my opinion. She is going over and beyond just to try and treat you like garbage, all because you live at home. And like seriously, how does she not understand the extenuating circumstances? Like she sounds incredibly ignorant, and the way she's treating you is so inappropriate. I'm also a firm believer that if you can dish it, you certainly better be able to take it. And it sounds like you flipped the script on your stupid sister and you said to her, hey, you married rich. Not all of us can get that lucky. And that, in my opinion, was a completely reasonable response. She's been hitting you with this for a long time. And if I was in your shoes, I probably would have said something similar as well. So I would not feel bad about this at all. No, because your sister started this mess to begin with. And if she's gonna start it, then you absolutely can finish it. My cousin puts an entitled Karen in her place, leaving her fuming and flabbergasted. Here's what happened. Sarah is one of my many cousins, and she's got a quick wit and sarcasm like no other. Sarah is not her real name. When we hang out, not even my friends mess with her, because they know she can tear anyone a new one, if you know what I mean. Sarah always gets me laughing and surprises me with her sarcasm and wittiness. Before the coronavirus outbreak, it was one of those take your kids to work days, and Sarah's mom, who we will call Aunt Jane, that's also not her real name, took Sarah to work with her. Aunt Jane owns and manages a family-owned store and was introducing Sarah to customer service before showing her what it's like to manage a place. So when Sarah gets older, she can decide if she wants to be a customer service assistant or something else entirely. So enter Sarah with a quick wit when an entitled Karen comes over to one of the cashiers and demands free gift cards because nothing in the store is good enough, and she wants something to actually use when coming back to this crappy store, as she puts it. When the Karen demanded to speak to Aunt Jane about the subpar merchandise, my aunt explained she doesn't give out free gift cards, especially to rude customers who insult her employees, and these employees are just doing their job and making honest money. Sarah later told me that the Karen had one of those squeaky, high-pitched voices that got higher the angrier she got. The Karen was middle-aged, but she sounded like a preteen boy whose voice just broke. When the woman demanded more stuff, Sarah was furious with the Karen, who was now insulting her mom. Aunt Jane is the kindest person you'll ever meet, and Sarah is fiercely protective of her. Sarah's a tiny firecracker, and this was when she launched, and I would have paid good money to watch her tear this Karen a new one. Ma'am, they say with age comes maturity, but with you, I really think it missed the mark. No one with your helium voice should be subjected to dealing with you on a normal basis, weekday or otherwise. So either buy stuff and leave, or just get out right now, okay? Sarah said that, by the way, word for word, and I died laughing when she told me about it. The entitled Karen was fuming, and she demanded the small employee who didn't know her place be fired. My Aunt Jane said to her, "This is my daughter. She doesn't work here, I can't fire her. And I wouldn't fire her for this either. She doesn't tolerate bullies, and a bully is what you are. Please leave now, ma'am." The Karen was fuming but left, and right after, Sarah texted me the entire story. I don't think the entitled Karen will be going to my Aunt Jane's store anytime soon, but either way, my cousin Sarah absolutely rocks.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. What if your life story was a podcast? Would it be a comedy or a thriller? Whatever genre, State Farm is there for your what ifs to keep your life story from becoming a mystery. Because when you've got questions, they've got answers 24/7. You can file a claim on the State Farm mobile app or simply give your agent a call. It's how insurance plays a supporting role in your story. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Visit statefarm.com for a quote today.
This episode is brought to you by Pennzoil. At Pennzoil, we have one job, pioneering a motor oil so advanced you don't have to think about your motor oil. Instead, you can think about how your engine sounds, how your stomach feels as the RPMs build, how your wheels hug the curves, and how with Pennzoil Platinum up to 15-year, 500,000-mile protection guarantee, your adventures will be many. Pennzoil, long may we drive. Enrollment required. Keep your receipts. Other conditions apply. See pennzoil.com/warranty for full details. Ask for it at Jiffy Lube.
How much care do you put into your eye care? We all put so much into what we eat, how we exercise, and skincare. That one's huge. But when our eyes are dry and irritated, a lot of us aren't doing as much as we could. That's why BioTrue Hydration Boost eye drops are here to provide a boost of moisture and comfort. And now there's BioTrue Hydration Boost for contacts, designed to rehydrate all kinds of contact lenses. Because BioTrue is self-care that cares about your eyes and lenses.
Love great shopping deals? Then you'll love Wish. And now Wish is even better with flat rate shipping, improved tracking, and faster delivery. With flat rate shipping, all the eligible items in your Wish order now ship for one flat rate of $2.99. Drones, drills, dresses, makeup, mixers, mobile phones. When you place one order, you pay just one flat rate, tracking included. Wish shipping isn't just cheaper either. It's also 26% faster. So what's your holdup? With Wish, you've got crazy low prices, super affordable shipping, and faster delivery. Download the Wish app today.
This episode is brought to you by Carvana. A date night, falling down an internet rabbit hole, that hobby you can't tell the neighbors about. Your time's valuable, and Carvana knows it. With Carvana, you can get an offer, sell your car, and get it gone 100% online. You shouldn't have to choose between time and money, so don't. Availability may vary by market. Tap the banner, click on this episode's page, or visit Carvana.com to learn more.
We honestly need more Sarahs in the world. I mean, that Karen was completely out of line. There was no reason for her to jump up there and actually ask for free gift cards. Like, seriously, who do you think you are? You gotta pay for those. There's no way you're getting that for free. And it must be nice to be the daughter of the business owner and also just to be the business owner themselves, because then you can tell these people to get lost and never come back, and there's really nothing they can do about it.